this is the structure that I'd like to go through. First of all, as I said, looking at some of the challenges that are being faced and tying in with what Simon had to say this morning, look at some of the contributions of educational research that it might be able to make to meeting some of those challenges. And then just talk a little bit about the need for innovation in classrooms, and that takes us to risk-taking and creativity and some of the things that Carol was dealing with. Then I want to get into the nub of this workshop, which is to look at the 7 elements of reflective practice. And along the way, we'll be looking at some examples and drawing on your examples. And then we'll summarise that at the end. So that's where we're going. And we start off in the first part by looking at some of these challenges. And as you know, I basically take the view that education is so interesting, so complicated, so variable because of the different circumstances and needs of the learners and the requirements that are made of teachers by the public and governments, etc., that one's work is never finished. There are no simple answers. So it's best to kind of get used to a certain amount of doubt and change and to become comfortable with the idea that one is always learning and adapting and flexible as you meet the future as it comes along. We'll go through the 7 elements of reflective practice, and I'll just talk a little bit about each of them. Aims and consequences. Now this is an interesting one. It says reflective teaching implies an active concern with aims and consequences as well as means and practical competence. Reflective teaching is not just about how we teach and learning the kind of basic skills of teaching. It's also about why we teach and what the effects of why we teach actually are. And I suppose the thing there is we know that this is a very, very important job and that we affect the life chances of the children in our care. And so we have to be mindful as reflective teachers. We are socially aware. We're aware that these are young people who will go on to important roles in our society. They'll be in the labour market. They'll be part of the economy. They'll be the citizens who are voting. They'll be the people who are at work when we're retired, and they'll be paying for our pensions. These are important people. They have rights and they have responsibilities too, but you can see it's a broader thing. It's not just the nitty-gritty of being a competent practitioner. We have to remember, as well as a reflective practitioner, the kind of social, broader moral and ethical aspects of the role and for the responsibility that society's given us when we're put in charge of a class of children. So that's the first aspect of reflective teaching. The second one is a cyclical inquiry process. Reflective teaching applied in a cyclical or spiralling process where teachers monitor, evaluate and revise their own practice. Now, there are lots of different models of this. This is the one, as you know, that I've used. It's all to do with the process of taking seriously really deep thinking, very thoughtful approach to one's development. And use of evidence is a key feature of that, I think. Now, because of that importance of evidence, one needs some inquiry skills. And that's the third element of reflective practice. Because one needs to be able to do an investigation of some of these issues if appropriate. And indeed, we've seen so many examples of this in the various presentations here at the conference from all the studies that you and others have been doing. And it's been very impressive to see those. But whenever one starts doing a little study of this sort, you have to ask some basic questions. I mean, what are you going to look at and why? And that's a very, very important judgment that has to be made, because the thing you investigate has presumably to be something important. And you have to be able to pick out from all the things in the classroom that might be investigated, the thing that has the most importance, that's going to have the highest kind of value to you for the effort you put into carrying out some sort of investigation. And then you get the issue of what evidence to collect and how. Because it's possible to collect evidence of all sorts of things, but it has to be relevant evidence. You can't just collect anything you like, willy-nilly. It's got to be something that's to do with whatever it is you think is important. Otherwise, it's not valid in the jargon. So it really has to be evidence on something which is targeted at the thing you've decided is important. And you have to collect it in such a way that you get some consistent and what's called reliable findings back, because it's very easy to mislead oneself. And then we've got these attitudes, which are linked to it, of course, linked to these things. It requires open-mindedness to be a good reflective practitioner, because you have to be open to the possibility of not that you've got something to learn, and so forth. Responsibilities link back to that that sense of awareness about the broader society and our role as teachers in it. And wholeheartedness is a commitment to trying to improve in an ongoing way. The fifth aspect of reflective practice we've talked about quite a lot, which is to do with judgment. As you know, I keep going on about judgment. It is, as one colleague over here said, it's about the quality of decision-making and how one does that. Sometimes people can make good judgment calls and sometimes they make bad judgment calls. But it's important that one knows what one's doing. The very fact of thinking that, and recognising that you are making judgments or taking decisions is in itself part of the solution here, I think. Sometimes if one just sort of is working in the classroom and you just get on and do things without thinking about them at all, then it's not transparent, it's not clear that you're making a decision. And of course, the minute you recognise that you are making decisions, it's possible to make different decisions. And you start to consider the pros and cons. So you're facing the dilemmas, you're facing the different options, and you will gradually start to make better and better decisions, I think. Let me move on to the sixth dimension of reflective practice, which is to do with learning with colleagues. Now, this is something which, again, this event is illustrating very well, because I think we're feeling how valuable it is to talk to each other, to share experiences, and to collaborate in dialogue together. And the final one I want to talk about, I've called creative mediation. And this one is that if you become confident as a reflective teacher, you are in a position where you can exercise independent judgment about things which you are being told what to do. In order to maintain the quality of what is being provided for the children by the teachers on the ground who really know those children and know their circumstances. Let me summarise and conclude this workshop. I've suggested that reflective practice can be very helpful in developing judgment, developing the quality of decision making. And because we can improve those decisions, it means the children will, on balance, learn more. The standards will improve. And the other thing about it is it's really quite fun to do. It's interesting to do. And many teachers who do engage in this sort of work do actually enjoy it and become fascinated by it. And it becomes a really nice part of their work, particularly if it's shared with other colleagues and you develop a positive kind of feeling about it. And of course, by improving the standards and the understanding, you do also develop that confidence that enables you to contribute to discussions about policy at a school level and maybe in the region and maybe nationally, who knows. I mean, I started off as a classroom teacher. I never expected to be doing anything of the sort of things I now somehow find myself doing, and I'm pretty bewildered by that. But I can promise you I was pottering about in my classroom for a long time, doing little studies, and learnt a little bit along the way. And I think that can happen to anybody. So it is a interesting, worthwhile and fulfilling process which can take you in all kinds of directions and enable you to make contributions of all sorts. That's the kind of model that's in the book. It's a little spiral where this process of reflective teaching gradually enhances one's professionalism. And there's a final kind of quote from one of the most influential figures in all this, Dewey, about reflective action: active, persistent, and careful consideration of any belief or supposed form of knowledge in the light of the grounds that support it and the further consequences to which it leads. In other words, a kind of active, persistent, careful investigation of what one takes for granted, investigating the routine so that you can develop and innovate and improve the quality of what we offer to the children and young people in our schools. So that, in my view, is reflective teaching. Thank you very much.